So first and foremost, I want to talk about immigration at a glance, right? So I alluded to it earlier on. There's all these visas, permits, work permits, study visa. What do they all mean and how do they fit in together? And I want to give you all a quick idea of the kind of hierarchy for Canadian immigration programs so that it'll make the rest of this presentation make a lot more sense. And hopefully you'll just have a better understanding of it in general. So what you want to understand is there's three kinds of statuses, of immigration statuses in Canada overall. The first one, and we'll think about this at the bottom of the ladder, is what we call temporary status. And this involves three types of permits: the study permit, the work permit, and the visitor permit. And the word permit and visa can really be used interchangeably in Canada. So study, work, visit, visa, study, work, visit, permit. They really just mean the same thing. What's most important to know here is that these are all temporary visas. So they're typically granted from anywhere from a few weeks to a few years. And they allow you to do very specific things in Canada. So you're coming into the country to study or work or visit, but you typically can't do those other things while you're on a specific type of temporary visa. So while you're on a work permit, you typically cannot study. While you're on a study permit, you can usually work up to 20 hours per week, but you cannot work full time. So that's level number one, the temporary status with the different temporary visas. The second step, so this is moving up a step on the ladder, so to speak, is what we call permanent residence. You might hear the term PR thrown around a lot. In fact, you'll probably hear it from me a lot in this presentation, PR, permanent residence. This is moving up a step in the immigration ladder, and you're gaining a lot more flexibility as you become a PR, because you can now do everything you could have done on a temporary permit. You can study, you can work full time, you can go to any city in the country and do any of those things that you want to do. There's a lot more flexibility. The PR card is granted to you for 5 years, and then it's quite easy to renew for another 5 years after as well. So you get a lot more rights as a permanent resident. You get a lot more flexibility, and it lasts for a lot longer. So you don't have to stress about, renewing it or applying for new ones and stuff like that. So PR is the second level. That's a good status to have. And then lastly, I won't touch too much on this for this presentation because I'm assuming most of you are actually outside of the country looking to get into Canada. But for those of you who one day want to get the Canadian passport, citizenship is that third level, right? So once you've been in Canada as a PR for at least 3 years, then you can apply for citizenship. So because citizenship is realistically at least 3-4 years away for most of you, we're not going to talk about it in this presentation, but I did want you to make you aware of the three statuses: citizenship at the top, PR in the middle, temporary status at the bottom. So hopefully that paints a good picture of the overall immigration space in Canada. Now what I want to do is go into detail on three of the most common ways for individuals to move to Canada. The first way is through a program called Express Entry. You may have heard of it, you may not have. This is a Canadian permanent resident application for skilled workers. So again, thinking back to that previous slide, permanent residence is that second step. It gets you a lot more flexibility, right? You can work anywhere you'd like. You can go back to school. You can travel around. It doesn't matter what city you're living in. And this is an online only process that typically takes 4 to 6 months for application processing. This is, I believe, the equivalent to something like a green card in the US. So when a lot of skilled workers hear that you can get an express entry PR status in 6 months, it's almost unbelievable because from what I hear, it can take 5+ years to get your green card in the US. You can, as I mentioned, you can live in any city. There are some exceptions around the province of Quebec, but I won't get into too much detail on that right now. What you'll need to start is two things, especially if you're coming from outside of the country. Number one is you do need a language exam. It doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what country your degrees are from. You will need a language exam. 4 of them are accepted. So the IELTS, the CELPIP, those are English exams. And then the TEF and the TCF, those are French exams. Those are also accepted. The other thing you're going to need is what's called an ECA, an Educational Credential Assessment. This is basically a report telling Immigration Canada what your degree is equivalent to in Canada. So if you have a post-secondary degree, then you're going to need to get it evaluated through an ECA. Again, doesn't matter what country your degree is from, doesn't matter what citizenship you are, you need the ECA if your degree is from outside of Canada. The reason why you need both of those things to get started is because Express Entry is a points-based program, and in order to actually calculate your points and create a profile, you need both of those things, the language exam and the ECA. So getting both of those done will allow you to determine your score and determine if Express Entry is a good option for you. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you some additional resources where we will help you get all of those things done easily and for free. A little bit more on Express Entry. So this is a promising option if you have a grad degree. So if you're outside of Canada right now looking to come through Express Entry, the reality is, unless you have something more than just a bachelor's degree, you're going to have a very hard time getting a high enough score. So this could include something like a master's, something like a PhD, another professional degree, right, in law, in medicine, in something like that. You're going to want some sort of graduate degree. If not, and you don't meet the second option, you might want to wait for when I talk about the study permit or a job offer. A job offer will get you a lot of bonus points through Express Entry and or allow you to be nominated through what's called a PNP. That will allow you to get more bonus points as well. So if you have a graduate degree or you can get a job offer from a Canadian company, Express Entry might be a good option for you. Really quickly, I want to break down the costs as well. I'm just going to throw these numbers up there to give you an idea for just an estimation of what you'll need in terms of application fees. So you'll see here the government filing fee starts at $13.25 Canadian. If you're including a spouse or children, which you can include in this application, it will be more. A few $100s for the English or French exam, another few $100s for that ECA, right, the college degree assessment. And then you'll probably want to budget another few $100s as well for things like the medical exam, police certificate. You might need to translate documents if they're not in English. You might have to ship documents if you need them sent in from other countries. So I want you to be aware of those costs as well. So that is option number one, getting permanent residency through the points-based program called Express Entry. Option number two, so especially if you don't have that graduate degree, right, and Express Entry is not a good option for you, and you want to do something like a postgraduate diploma or a master's degree, coming to Canada as an international student has become extremely, extremely popular in the last few years, to a point where last year Canada approved over 402,000 study permits in a single year, and this is almost double what they approved in 2015, so just 5 years ago. So the government's really taking a liking to study permits. It also is a smooth path to PR, right? So what you want to keep in mind with the study permit is getting that graduate degree will give you bonus points for Express Entry, that program I just talked about. So that's number one. Getting a graduate degree in Canada will give you even more bonus points towards Express Entry. And when you graduate from a study permit, in many cases, you're eligible for what's called a post-grad work permit. This is an open work permit. It allows you to stay in Canada once you graduate, work for any company that you can get a job from. And if you are able to get 1 year of Canadian work experience, that gives you even more bonus points for Express Entry. Hence, smooth path to PR if you can pull it off. Now, the difficulties may or may not be difficult depending on your situation. The first one is getting an approval letter. So before applying for a study permit, you do have to have an approval letter from a Canadian college or university. This can be difficult if you have not very strong grades. This can be pretty easy if you have, strong grades and a bachelor's degree or something like that, especially now because of COVID. A lot of colleges and universities are really hurting. So they're looking for students. So it could actually be an easier time than ever to get approved by a college or university in Canada. But again, this is situational. Secondly is, of course, finances, right? So especially if you're someone who maybe you've already graduated, you're working, or you've already done a degree in the US where fees are even higher than in Canada, you might need to start working and get to work and start earning a salary. And so obviously this is a big financial decision from a personal level, right? So that's something that you or your family will have to look into to see if going to school again as an international student is a viable option. But if you can get both of those things done, a really, really popular route is to come to Canada as an international student and work your way towards PR. So that's item number 2. Let's move on to the third option, which is to get sponsored. And when I say get sponsored, what I mean is to get sponsored by a Canadian company for what's called a closed work permit. So I had mentioned the post-grad work permit previously, which is an open work permit. Open meaning you can work for any company, but those are very difficult to get, and you can only get them in very specific scenarios. If you're able to get a Canadian company to sponsor you, you can apply for what's called a closed work permit. That allows you to come to Canada and work for that specific company and that specific company only. But of course, it allows you into the country. The other part about this is if you can get that closed work permit, and especially if you're able to work for at least 1 year on that closed work permit, it can be a smooth path to PR. I write in most cases because PR is points-based, right? So some of you might have a really high score, especially with this closed work permit. Some of you, especially people that are older and might lose some points due to their age, or who don't even have a bachelor's degree, might actually have a hard time still getting a high enough score. But the closed work permit and the Canadian work experience will give you a lot of bonus points through Express Entry to make that a really good option. The difficulties, I should say difficulty, is landing the job itself, right? So for some of you who maybe have tried finding a job in Canada, or maybe you've even tried finding a job in the US, especially from outside of the country, it can be very, very difficult landing a job from outside of the country, especially when you're trying to get a company to sponsor you. So this could be promising if you're working in very high demand industries, right? If you're working in tech, if you're working in healthcare, in Canada, if you're working in something like trucking or hospitality used to be popular, although hospitality's obviously taken a big hit due to COVID. So if you're in one of those high demand industries, this could be worth looking into, or if you have some connections with specific companies that might be willing to sponsor you, or if you work for a US company with Canadian offices, it could be another option to have the company transfer you into Canada on a closed work permit. That's another popular option as well. So that is it for the 3 different options. In terms of next steps, what I want to talk about first is COVID, right? So how is COVID affecting the 3 of those? COVID actually affected Express Entry a lot at the beginning stages, but it has since kind of moved back to normal. So the Express Entry scores that have been required have actually come back to normal in or around the 470s for those who pay attention. The biggest effect COVID is having on Express Entry is that if you don't live in the US and you get approved for Express Entry, you're still not allowed to travel into the country. I believe most of you are located in the US. Nitin can correct me if I'm wrong, but getting Express Entry, if you live in the US, does allow you to travel into Canada. That being said, that could very well change by the time you get Express Entry, right? Express Entry might take you 4, 5, 6, 8 months to get, and the travel restrictions may be reduced by then. In terms of the study permit, they just lifted the travel restrictions on study permits. So if you get approved for a study permit and your school has been approved by their province by having a proper COVID readiness plan in place, then you can actually travel to Canada and start your studies. So they've made the most exceptions for international students during this time. So study permit remains a very good option. Work permit has actually been affected the least, because as long as you have a work permit and can show that you're needed in Canada, then they've been allowing work permit holders in even from the beginning of COVID in March. So work permit as well is a really good option, assuming you can get the work permit. Obviously, COVID has also affected the job market in Canada, so you're going to want to keep an eye on that depending on what industry you are working in. Next up, evaluate your situation and your options, right? So I just gave you a lot of information. I'm going to actually give you some resources for even more, but consider the three options I just talked about and evaluate them based on your situation, right? Do you have the graduate degree? Do you want to go back to school? Are you in a high demand occupation? Take all of these options in mind and do a little bit more digging based off of which option seems the best for you. You can, of course, always talk to a professional, and I'll show you a place where you can find reliable ones in just a second, because sometimes, especially if you're at the beginning and you're confused, a professional can point out a clear path that you might not have otherwise found, or even pointed out a different path that you didn't know existed, right? Because I only covered 3 programs here today. So in summary, I said I'd keep it short and crisp and to the point. We talked about immigration at a glance, right? The 3 different statuses: temporary, permanent residence, citizenship. I talked about 3 strong options for moving to Canada: express entry for permanent residence, international student on a study permit, or a foreign worker on a work permit. I talked a little bit about what to do next, including how COVID is affecting it. What I want to do is quickly tell you a little bit about Visto, because it can help you do all of those things we just talked about. So we were finding that immigration can obviously be very confusing. It can also be expensive if you want to work with professionals. So we created Visto.ai. This is a free platform that basically has more guides and information on all of the options that we just talked about and more. So what we do is we teach you a little bit about the basics of each program so you can navigate the different options and find out the best one for you. We take you from start to finish, and you can also book time with reliable immigration lawyers on the platform as well. Here's a quick snapshot of the portal. It's actually been updated even since, so you can see there's a menu along the left. There's a bunch of different immigration options, and then we have study permit options, work permit options, and you can see there the button help from a lawyer, where you can book help from a lawyer right inside the portal itself. So that's it for the presentation. Wanted to say thanks everybody for listening. I see everybody stuck around. We even had some extra people pop in for the Q&A. If you're interested in signing up for the portal to learn more about how to calculate your score for express entry, how to apply for the study permit, how to find a job to get the work permit, and more, definitely sign up at Visto.ai. You can also join our private Facebook group. I go live every single Sunday for a session just like